I've come to the conclusion that there is no perfect sleeping pad. You simply have to find the pad that works best for you and the adventures that you go on because of climate or topography. I thought it would be a good discussion. What do you want in your sleeping pad? Maybe a budget sleeping pad is a better option. Let's talk about it. Welcome to As a Crow Flies Hiking. When I was thinking about what to look for in a sleeping pad, I stumbled across Gear Lab Test. It's a website that looks at comparisons of different backpacking gear and different outdoor items, and it really gave some criteria and some things to think about when you're comparing these types of pads. And so I took the two pads that I typically use on different situations, the Nemo Tensor and the Thermarest NeoAir XLite, and looked at their comparisons of those two items. Specifically, it has certain criteria that I came up with an acronym for, and that is CSWWDIPS. So it is comfort, size and weight, warmth, durability, ease of inflation, price, and specs. It helped me remember it so that I can kind of talk to you about what to think about in relation to these pads. For comfort, the Gear Test Lab gave the Nemo Tensor a higher grade of comfort than the Thermarest NeoAir XLite. And I guess that's because this has a lighter fabric. It has a different baffling system. You can see these baffles go straight, whereas these have these kind of dimpled baffles that gives more comfort when you're laying on it. However, I guess that is just preferential and personable. For me, I like to sleep on a more firm mattress at home. And so this particular pad, the XLite, is more comfortable to me because I like a firmer pad. Whereas this one, the Tensor, is 25 inches wide and the air kind of spreads out and it's a little bit softer to me, so I'm not quite as comfortable on this pad as I am the XLite. However, that is why you have to kind of look at these, maybe go to a store and lay on them and see which one is more comfortable to you, depending on how you sleep at home. Going to size and weight. Well, each one of these pads, including the new updated versions, the Thermarest NeoAir XLite has the NXT version, which is the upgraded version that it has a higher R value and it also is quieter. It says it's 6 times quieter than the normal pad or the previous pad version. The Nemo Tensor comes in different sizes. It has a 25-inch wide, long and short. It also has, comparable to the XLite, it has a 25-inch wide pad now with the NXT version. It also has a short, a long, and a wide. So all different sizes, and they both came in basically the same. As far as the weight, it was a little confusing to me. The claimed weight for the NeoAir XLite is 12 ounces. Mine was somewhere around there when I weighed it, maybe 12 and a half, almost 13. The Nemo Tensor comes in at around 15 ounces, but both of them come in well under a pound, so certainly very lightweight. Next, we talk about the warmth, and that's where you get into a little bit more complication of the R value. R value stands for thermal resistance. In 2020, the outdoor standards came out for every company, and they give an R value related to sleeping pads. Our bodies will shed heat in 4 different ways. There is convection, conduction, radiant heat, and evaporation. So convection is simply you touching an item with one thermal resistance and transferring the heat over to another. When you're lying on the ground with one of these pads, you're touching the pad or touching the ground, and the thermal resistance or the thermal heat transfers. So when you think about that with sleeping pads, you're on the ground in your tent and your body is touching the sleeping pad and touching the ground. And because the ground is constantly churning and trying to take away heat from your body, you have to be thinking about, is there insulation in my pad that can keep the heat towards my body and keep me closer to 98.6? That is our value. Nemo and Thermarest do basically some of the similar things. They take a baffling system with a mylar looking material like you see in happy birthday balloons, and it is this aluminized or metallized fabric, very lightweight, and they baffle it into different corners and triangles. And so when your body heat hits those triangles, it bounces back and reflects and keeps the body close. That's the best I can do explaining it, but R value comes in from 1 all the way up to 7. 1 being basically nothing, you're relying on the ground, which typically, even in the summer, is 20 degrees less than you're just standing up in the air. So it is going to take away the heat from your body. Then the R value can go all the way up to 7, which would be a winter type sleeping pad. So it's something to consider. The R value for the Nemo Tensor is 3.5, and the R value for the Thermarest in the versions that I have was 4.2 claimed at the time. The new NXT pad for Thermarest has gone up to 4.5 instead of 4.2, and the Nemo Tensor has gone up in their upgraded pad to 4.2. Now, a budget item that I have, this budget sleeping pad that I'll talk about in a second, has an R value of 2.7, and it simply relies on the fabric itself. The next thing you talk about is durability. The Thermarest NeoAir XLite comes in with a 30D ripstock nylon. The Nemo Tensor comes in with a 20D ripstock nylon. So to the touch, it feels different. It feels like a thinner fabric than the 30D. And then this budget AKSOL sleeping pad has a 40D, and you certainly can feel it. It's a lot thicker, but that also adds to the weight. The next thing that the Gear Lab test talked about, which I like to consider too, and it's something you should think about when you buy a pad, is the ease of the inflation. So you got to look at the valve. Different pads have different valves. On the Thermarest NeoAir XLite, the upgraded version before even the NXT, which I have on this pad, is a wing valve. And this valve is so much better than the previous version years ago. It doesn't leak, and that's what happened to my pad. It leaked, it had holes in it, and that valve had all sorts of issues. But this particular valve has really been highly praised by the industry. It works really well, and the Gear Lab test gave the NeoAir XLite a higher rating because that valve is easy to inflate and very durable. Whereas the Nemo Tensor valve has a micro adjustment valve. You can see that it's on top. It has 2 different flaps that you pull open. If you pull open both, the air just goes out very quickly. If you pull open one, it holds the air in and you can blow into it. Of course, I use a flex tail pump. It's the mini pump, and it has different ways to fit all kinds of pads and the different valves, but that makes it a lot easier for me to blow these pads up. But essentially, you blow air into it, either with a pad or your breath, and this particular valve is easy to use, but I prefer the Thermarest NeoAir XLite valve, that wing valve. It's really worked well for me. The next thing you got to think about is price. Yeah, these pads are expensive, and that's why I also brought out the AKSOL budget inexpensive pad to kind of consider in relation to these pads. The prices come in at all over the board. At the time of this video, there were different sites that had different prices. The new NXT version of the Thermarest NeoAir XLite comes in around $219. That's because they've made it a lot quieter with those baffles. And the Nemo Tensor comes in around $199, and the new upgraded pad could be as much as $220 as well. So when you think of that in relation to a budget pad, this AKSOL inflatable pad, it comes in at around $35. But I'll talk about in a minute what you give up in relation to those. And then of course the specs. And I've said what the specs are. You're talking about in this particular version, it's a 20-inch wide pad, which some people don't prefer because your shoulders and elbows come off the pad, whereas a 25-inch wide pad gives you a little more options. Now, the one thing that I will say in relation to the specs is you've got to look at the thickness of the pad. The NeoAir XLite, the one that I got, was 2.5 inches in thickness. The new upgraded version, the NXT, comes in at 3 inches of thickness, whereas the Nemo Tensor was always around 3 inches of thickness, and so that really does give you a lot of comfort. You want to have your whole body off the ground, and the thickness of the pad helps that. If you're really concerned about the price of these $200 pads or $180 pads. There are budget items out there. In fact, I brought one here, the AKSOL sleeping pad, that is sold at $35. And that is a great price for that particular pad. But what do you give up for $35, and what's the difference? The difference is going to be the R value, and the difference is going to be the weight. The weight of this particular pad is close to 2 pounds. Now, most people would say, well, that's not too bad, I'll take it. So if you want to really focus on price and not focus on weight, this particular pad will give you a great option around $35. Now, what about the R value? The R value of this particular pad is 2.7. That takes into account essentially the 40D ripstop fabric, and that is how it is insulated. There is no real baffling system that I can see in the pad. It's creating this dimple system with the baffles that it has, but no internal baffles. But what is great about this pad is, number one, it comes with a pillow, about a 4-inch pillow there. It's about 2.5 inches, I say. It says that it's 3 inches in thickness. I would say more like 2.5. That is just on the top of the baffles. It is, though, 28 inches wide, which is wonderful to have that width because you can roll all over the place. If you're somebody who rolls at night, you're going to have a lot of room on this pad. And lastly, as I think I will show you, it has this basically self-inflation or pump with your foot, which was a unique feature to me and kind of innovated. And that's why I got it, because I thought this would be neat. It has a valve on the bottom and then a valve on the top. You can release a little bit of air on the top as you lay on the pad at night, or you can simply open this one up. It doesn't release the air, and step on it and it pumps the air into the pad. So you don't have to blow into the pad with a mini pump or with batteries or with your breath. You simply step on the pad and it self pumps the pad up, and it does it very quickly. So a great unique pad, unique features. It also is able to attach 2 pads, so if you get 2 of them, you can snap them together and create a double pad if you're going with your partner. So a great feature and a great pad for $35. Of course, you are giving up weight, but if that is something that interests you and you're looking for a less expensive pad that's still budget and still good quality, because the 40 denier is going to be very durable, then that's something to think about. Of course, if you want to just simply go with a closed self pad, you can do that. But I've never found those pads to be very comfortable. I guess if I was a younger man, it probably wouldn't bother me because my hips and back wouldn't be an issue. In the end, you simply have to find the pad that works for you. There is no perfect pad out there. You just simply have to look and find which one fits your adventures and fits your climate and fits your comfort and your particular needs for a sleeping pad. I hope you got something out of this particular video. If you did, I hope you'll subscribe to the channel. But mostly, I would really prefer you to comment below and tell me, what did I miss? I'm not an expert on sleeping pads. What is something that you consider very important when purchasing a sleeping pad? Thanks for watching As the Crow Flies Hiking, and I'll see you on the next adventure.